Chekov's Challenge by Walter Koenig and Chris McCauley. Stardate 8130. Commander Pavel Chekov stood by the viewport in his quarters aboard the USS Enterprise. His gaze was fixed upon the stars. The blurred points of light glinted across his eyes as the ship limped towards Earth's space dock, still some light years distant. The Enterprise had been badly damaged in its most recent adventure, and Scotty had ensured that the senior staff knew that he was performing miracles in engineering just to keep the ship at warp speed. Chekov's thoughts turned inward, towards the weeks since the devastating events surrounding Khan Noonien Singh's return and the sacrifice of Mr. Spock. Since joining the service, he'd always felt a passion for Starfleet's mission to explore the uncharted realms of the universe. As a younger man, the adventures he had shared with the crew of the Enterprise had always filled him with a giddy joy, unsure of what dangers he would face or wonders he would encounter as each duty shift began. He had taken those feelings with him during his short and ill-fated tenure with the USS Reliant. Now, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to summon some of that excitement. But once again, the memories of Spock's selfless sacrifice played in his mind like a haunting melody. The guilt that he felt about his part in Singh's plot was a perfect bitter chaser. Although his mind had been controlled by a seedy eel, he couldn't help but feel that he could have done something different to prevent the events playing out as they did. Suddenly, Chekov's reverie was broken as a series of shocking explosions rocked the Enterprise. A red hue bathed his quarters, and klaxons blared throughout the starship as Chekov stumbled from his quarters and headed towards the bridge. Admiral Kirk spared the experienced tactical officer a glance as he rushed towards his position, Ensign Kelly gladly yielding the position. "Glad to have you with us, Mr. Chekov." Even with the dire nature of the situation unfolding around them, Kirk managed to inject some warmth in his terse tone. Chekov's fingers navigated around the tactical console. The sensor readings indicated that a lone Orion pirate ship, a cruiser-class vessel, had emerged from a gaseous nebula ahead, clearly lying in wait for them. The cosmic phenomenon had masked its approach and enabled it to take the Enterprise by surprise. Chekov guessed that the pirate ship's sensors had detected the heavy damage the starship had sustained, and that its commander was an opportunist. Booty from a Federation ship would elevate a pirate captain's reputation, as well as her credit rating. The Enterprise rocked again with the impact of the pirate ship's Epsilon disruptor blasts. The ship's shields were holding, but Chekov knew that after their encounter with Khan, the ship's systems were only operating at 60% efficiency, and the barrage was already beginning to seriously compromise shield integrity. To make matters worse, weapons systems were still offline. Its energy banks were being diverted to a warp core to maintain speed. "Admiral, I could confirm from the pirate ship's signature that it's a notorious Orion marauder, the Corsair's Revenge." Uhura's voice rang out, with its customary calm authority over the alert sirens continuing to sound on the bridge. Kirk leaned forward, his eyes widening, and gave voice to the bridge crew's thoughts. Yet another dreaded enemy had returned from the past. Garroth! The name conjured up past confrontations with the fearless pirate captain who now stalked a ship. The Enterprise had played a cat-and-mouse game with this commander decades ago, and Kirk remembered how dangerous a foe the Corsair had been. Chekov thought back to that first encounter with Garroth, straight after the Enterprise had its near-devastating encounter with the Tholians. Echoing their position now, despite Scotty's best efforts then, the Tholians' trap had left the starship's systems under strain, its crew vulnerable, and Garroth had taken advantage with a sneak attack. He shuddered, remembering how Garroth had jammed communication systems with his boasts of how he would destroy Starfleet's finest. That proved his undoing then, of course, his broadcast heard by the USS Yorktown, who had sped to their aid and sent Garroth running, his ship badly damaged. But, he noted grimly, there was no such support for the Enterprise now, anywhere in the immediate area. As Chekov desperately attempted to maneuver the Enterprise out of danger, The Revenge continued to unleash a series of devastating attacks. The tactical officer saw a spread of deadly photon torpedoes launch towards the Enterprise, and sweat began to form on his brow and top lip. The twin demons of doubt and fear, which he had so desperately tried to control, took hold of his mind. He wasn't sure, after all that had happened in the previous few months, that he was up to this task of helping defend the ship. Time seemed too slow, and Khan's face, with its cruel, mocking smile, danced before his eyes. He felt sick to his stomach, and a terrifying sensation of hopelessness washed over him. It was then that he heard a familiar voice speak. It seemed to come from behind him. It was impossible, but there was no mistaking the intonation or accent. "You can do this, Mr. Chekov. I have full confidence in your abilities." The cool, logical voice of Spock cut through Khan's mocking laughter. Chekov glanced over his shoulder, hoping to see his old Vulcan friend and mentor. Instead, he saw another familiar face, Admiral Kirk. The tactical officer noted Kirk's eyes were filled with a mixture of determination and sorrow. He, of all the bridge crew, had been the closest of all to Spock, and just like Chekov, had found his thoughts turning to his old friend in this moment of crisis. Kirk's eyes shifted to Chekov, and for a second they locked gazes. There was a silent acknowledgement between the two men, and in that moment Chekov found the strength to push his doubts aside. The torpedoes barely missed the hull as Chekov expertly banked the ship sharply to the right. His focus sharpened, and his mind cleared as his fingers danced across the controls. With each successful evasion, Chekov's confidence grew. He once again trusted in his training and the skills he had acquired over the long years of his Starfleet service. "Scotty, how long until we can fire the phasers? I want to put some heat on that Orion." Kirk's question was answered with a Scottish burr of chief engineer. "Coming online now, Admiral. Fire away." Kirk turned his head towards his tactical officer. "You heard the man, Chekov. Use those phasers." Chekov responded with an emphatic, "Yes, sir," as he eagerly touched the phaser controls and unleashed a powerful wave of red energy. It struck the pirate ship, and the tactical officer restrained the urge to cheer. "Direct hit, Admiral." Chekov's exultant voice elicited a slight smile from Kirk. Something had happened during this battle. Some of the fire, which he knew from the Chekov of the old, had returned. That was good. They would need it. "It's a good start, Mr. Chekov, but we aren't out of the woods yet." As the battle raged on between the Enterprise and aboard the Orion pirate ship, its captain, older and wiser since his first encounter with the starship long ago, realized that he needed to regain the upper hand quickly. Although the Enterprise was damaged, the reputation of Admiral James Kirk was not lost on Gareth. It was rumored that Kirk was one of the Federation's finest strategists and could always emerge victorious regardless of the odds against him. The Orion ship's captain had no desire to be a part of Kirk's continued legacy. Gareth barked orders to his crew in his native tongue. His first mate, a hulking Nausicaan named Graal, was tasked with leading a boarding party. The Corsair would keep the Enterprise busy while Graal and his team plundered the Federation ship from within. "Prepare the boarding pods!" Gareth commanded in guttural tones and hisses. His eyes gleamed with reptilian avarice as he imagined the booty his crew would raid. "We'll exploit their damaged shields and slip through their defenses like a serpent in the grass, and I'll have revenge on Kirk at last." The Corsair launched a fleet of small, agile, cylinder-shaped transportation tubes, which were directed towards the Enterprise. These pods were equipped with stealth technology which Gareth had cannibalized from the Klingons, making them nearly invisible to the sensors. Each pod carried a team of heavily armed pirates. Meanwhile, Uhura's fingers flew across her control panel as she monitored the Enterprise's sensors and communication frequencies. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the intense battle raged on. Sweat broke out on the communication officer's brow as she focused on her task, her keen instincts and training honed to perfection. She, like Admiral Kirk, remembered the last encounter with Gareth. These pirates were formidable enemies, and Uhura knew that detecting any weakness in their tactics could be the key to the Enterprise crew's survival. The sensor readouts showed the energy fluctuations from the ongoing battle, the flicking of the shields as they were struck by deadly phaser weapons, and the blips indicating photon torpedo exchanges. Then something caught her attention, a subtle surge in the background energy patterns. It was as if there were disturbances in the fabric of space itself. She frowned. Her intuition was telling her something was amiss. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures. It's as if something is materializing inside our shields." Her voice cut through the chaos of the bridge, and all eyes turned to her station. Kirk looked at Uhura with a serious expression. "Elaborate, Commander." "I can't be certain, but it's as though objects are phasing into existence within the ship's shields. It's highly irregular." One possibility rang through Kirk's mind. It seemed impossible, but he couldn't take the chance that his instincts were wrong. "Red alert! Intruders on board! All hands prepare for boarders!" Kirk's commanding voice echoed through the ship as the crew sprang into action. Security teams rushed to secure vital areas, arming themselves for the impending battle. "Mr. Chekov, you've proven your tactical expertise time and again. I need you to take command of our security teams and repel those boarders." Chekov's eyes met Kirk's once again with a quiet confidence. "Aye, sir. I will defend the ship with everything we've got." With a determined look, Chekov rose from his station and headed towards the turbolift, unholstering his phaser and checking its energy banks along the way. As Chekov departed, Kirk returned to the ongoing battle, knowing that his crew was in capable hands. Chekov sprinted towards engineering. It was logical that the Marauders would coordinate their attacks there to effectively sabotage the ship. He observed crew members activating force field barriers at critical junctions, fortifying bulkhead doors, and setting up impromptu barricades. The ship's engineering teams worked in tandem with security to ensure that the intruders would encounter formidable resistance. The pirates, clad in rugged, dark spacesuits, cut through the ship's bulkheads with their weapons and fanned out into the engineering corridor. Their disruptor rifles were poised and ready, emitting a low, ominous hum. Each pirate's eyes scanned their surroundings, searching for signs of the Enterprise crew they had come to confront. "Spread out, find their weak points, and remember to plant the charges near the warp reactor core. We have a ship to plunder." Grall's voice boomed towards Chekov and his security detail. They had hidden themselves against an alcove as the pirate crew had cut their way in. Chekov scrutinized his team, checking their status. A few were seasoned officers who had served with the crew many years earlier. Most were raw cadets on their first training mission when they gained brutal, bloody experience during their encounter with Khan. Each nodded towards their commander in turn, signaling that they were ready. Chekov slowly counted to 3 and then led his team out of the alcove and towards the pirates. With shouts of resolve, the Federation crew fired their phaser rifles at the enemy. The pirates found themselves at a disadvantage and taken by surprise. They fought back, but the Enterprise crew were determined to defend their ship at any cost. The corridor echoed with the sizzling of phaser blasts and the menacing green blasts of disruptors. Chekov's expertise also came into play as he directed his team to exploit the ship's layout for tactical advantages. Under his direction, they used cover effectively and employed suppression fire to keep the pirates pinned down. "Hold your positions. We have the advantage. Keep the pressure on." Chekov's voice carried above the noise of the battle and encouraged the security team to dig in and choose their targets carefully for maximum effort. The Orion pirates, realizing that the tide of battle was turning against them, became increasingly desperate. Some attempted to charge the crew in a reckless bid to break through the defense. Others sought refuge only to be flushed out by the determined Enterprise personnel. Gradually, the crew's discipline, teamwork, and superior numbers began to wear down the invaders. Phaser blasts found their marks, and the pirates fell one by one, their disruptor rifles clattering to the floor. Kirk pressed the communicator control in his command chair as the Enterprise rocked from the impact of the Corsair's photon torpedoes. "Chekov, report! What's the status of our boarders?" His question was met by the reassuring voice of his tactical officer. "Admiral, we've successfully repelled the pirates. There are a few stragglers, but our security teams are mopping them up now as we speak." Kirk's shoulders visibly relaxed as he received Chekov's update. His voice carried a note of relief and pride as he responded, "Well done, Mr. Chekov. Your leadership and the crew's bravery saved the day. Keep me updated on any further developments. Kirk out." With that, the communication channel closed. Kirk turned his attention back to the battle against the Orion pirate ship. His gaze narrowed on the view screen where the pirate ship loomed. Outgunned by the Enterprise, Scotty, who'd somehow avoided the pirates in engineering, was working miracles once more. The Orion vessel had taken severe damage, but the battle was far from over. Kirk's earlier relief now turned into steely resolve. "Let's show these pirate scum that they've chosen the wrong ship to tangle with. Mr. Sulu, if I said Operation Solar Flare to you, would it mean anything?" The helmsman thought for a moment before a smile creased his face. "If I recall correctly, sir, this was a tactic from the early days. Captain Archer, I believe, required reading at the academy." Kirk nodded, and with a smile said, "At your discretion, helmsman." Operation Solar Flare was a risky yet clever plan that would use the radiant power of the nearby star to the advantage of the Enterprise. The star was in its red giant phase, emitting intense bursts of solar radiation. Kirk clicked a button on his chair to contact the chief engineer. "Scotty, can you reconfigure the deflector shields to channel the radiation from the sun towards the Orion vessel?" "Aye, sir, but we can only handle that sort of energy for a short time. Perhaps only 1 or 2 blasts. Admiral, then we've had it." "We've had it if we don't, Mr. Scott. Make the arrangements." As the Corsair closed in on the Enterprise, Kirk ordered a series of evasive maneuvers. He needed to give Scotty enough time to reconfigure the deflectors and also keep the Enterprise between the pirate ship and the Red Sun. "All power to forward shields. Don't engage the Orion ship directly. Keep them focused on us." Kirk tried to hide the tension from his voice as he continued to direct his crew. They had one shot at this. Sulu deftly navigated the Enterprise closer to the Red Giant, positioning it strategically to execute Kirk's plan. "We are in position, Admiral." Kirk pressed his communications button again. "Scotty, are you ready?" The gentle Scottish burr confirmed that all the dishes had been reconfigured. "Now, Mr. Scott, divert auxiliary power to the deflector dish and prepare to channel the solar radiation." Kirk glanced at Sulu. "On my mark, Commander." As the Corsair's Revenge closed in for what it believed to be its final assault on the Enterprise, Kirk saw his opportunity. He nodded to Sulu, who expertly aligned the ship with the star. "Now, Sulu!" At that moment, a massive solar flare erupted from the Red Giant. A searing burst of energy bathed the Orion pirate ship in a blinding wave of radiation. The pirate ship's systems overloaded, shields faltered, and its crew was left disoriented and vulnerable. Kirk didn't hesitate. He ordered all available energy to be channeled into a devastating phaser volley directed at the now helpless pirate ship. Phaser beams converged, and with a blinding explosion, the Corsair's Revenge was engulfed in a cataclysmic fireball. "That's the end of their piracy days," Kirk muttered with some satisfaction. As Sulu confirmed the destruction of the Orion ship, Chekov exited the turbolift and walked onto the bridge. Kirk greeted him with a nod and a heartfelt smile. "There will be a commendation in my log for you, Mr. Chekov. Your action saved the ship." Later, as Pavel Chekov walked towards his quarters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He knew that Spock would have approved of his actions. Chekov had honored his fallen comrade through his courage and unwavering determination. As he gazed out his viewport once more, Chekov still felt the keen ache of loss, but it was now tempered with a newfound strength and resolve. The road ahead would be challenging, but he felt a rekindled sense of hope. No longer burdened by doubt, Chekov had proven his worth in the heat of battle and felt a renewed purpose. If his friends were beside him, he knew he could face whatever adventures the galaxy had in store.